When things start looking like they are settling, that's usually when they are actually shifting. America has chosen the limbo stage of war and expects the world to be aligned with it. To stop the bleeding for everybody, they should fight the Americans' war. That's the Americans' motto. But will they? Or will they move on? And now that's the main question now. Welcome to Fourth Floor Post English. Because limbo is the most dangerous phase of any war. In an all-out war, at least there is clarity. You know who is fighting whom, on where, what the grounds are, what the troops are, who died, who nothing. But in limbo, everyone is stuck, everyone is bleeding. And more importantly, everyone is being forced into decisions without officially making them. And that's exactly what America is doing right now. And it's not helping America. You know, it's acting like a dying empire. His allies will hedge. See, people think Trump is confused. One day he talks about weeks, the next day he gives 48 hours ultimatum. Then he talks about deals, then escalation. This is a limbo strategy. Stretch the conflict, keep it unresolved, let everyone bleed, Iran, Europe, global markets, Arabs, China, and hope anyone will break, or either Iran will break, or even someone out of the compulsion will be forced to escalate in Americans' favor or mediate in Americans' favor. But this strategy only works when you are in complete control of everything. Right now, America is not. That's where this becomes bigger than just a war. This is not about Iran anymore. This is about global order adjusting itself. For decades, the system revolved around one center of gravity. Now, that center is shaking. Not because someone defeated it calmly or cleanly, but because it's overreaching, making emotional decisions and taking risks that stable powers don't take. This is how empires behave when the future no longer belongs to them. And that's what America is doing. Look at the contradictions. On one side, threats, escalation, firing military officers, ultimatums, military pressures, boots on ground. On the other side, desperation, attempts to restart talks, attempts to declare victory and exits. That's not control. That's someone trying to manage the decline without admitting it. And in that exact space, China has stepped in, not loudly, not emotionally, but structurally. China is not trying to win this war. China is positioning itself for after the war, or for the hedging of the different countries. And that's why you see very calculated moves Afghanistan and Pakistan suddenly brought to the table. Why? Gwadar CPEC. Diplomatic pressures being applied quietly but firmly on Pakistan. Pakistan being pulled into alignment during the mediation with America. Iran's position being endorsed by America and China without theatrics. And then the bigger signal, China openly saying that it will financially support the consequences of war. Does that ring a bell? IMF sort of situation. See, that's not the statement, that's a system signal. And that's China hinting that there is an alternative to the IMF-led or the American world order. And this is where the things become very serious. Because at the same time, you see Europe and UK, along with a dozen of other countries, 30 countries are not lining up behind America militarily. They are moving diplomatically even towards Iran if needed for the strait. This is called hedging. And hedging only starts when trust in the system begins to collapse. And this trust in the American system is beginning to collapse, which means the shift is not coming. It has already started. Countries are slowly repositioning it themselves, not loudly, not officially, but practically. And China understands this perfectly. Pakistan does too. Look at Pakistan's slightly hedging towards the Chinese bloc again. Expected. Why would we go against neighbors in favor of Arabs? See, China doesn't need to fight America. It just needs to let America stretch itself and then offer the world an alternative when everyone starts looking for one. And now brings this into the Middle East, even if ceasefire happens. And it might. Nothing goes back to how it was. The Strait of Hormuz, even if it opens, it will not function under the same assumptions as before the war. The petrodollar system has already taken a very massive hit. The Arab states have exposed their positions, not as a neutral players, but as a participants under pressure. Look at UAE, man, already aligned openly with Israel and India. Saudi is still balancing, but the pressure is visible. Iran, on the other hand, is not just surviving, it is negotiating from the position of endurance. That's why Iran is playing hardball. Stop the attacks first, then we will talk. Because Iran knows something very clearly. America wants a messy exit. America knows something very clear. Because the world will not say America will want the messy exit so that it could come back. But Iran is not going to bend under this limbo. America has to do something more, and that's the problem. That's the escalation trap. Israel, meanwhile, is pushing for that escalation trap. Because, this escalation will gather around everybody in the fire. And this is where the situation becomes very unstable for America. Because if this escalation happens, America gets dragged into a longer war. If it exits like that, it loses the control of the system that it has, worked so hard for more than decades in Middle East. Either way, the outcome is not what it used to be. So now let's talk about Pakistan. This is where the most people are misunderstanding the situation. People say Pakistan overestimates itself. No, Pakistan has consistently underestimated itself. A nuclear state, a critical geography, a capable population, and yet decision making is driven by fear. Fear of sanctions, fear of IMF, fear of external pressure. And then this packaged as national interest. It isn't, it's dependency. And now, for the first time in the long time, Pakistan is being forced out of that comfort zone. Initially, it looked like a mediation, then it became the facilitation between America and Iran, and now it's something entirely else. Pakistan is no longer choosing its role, it's being pushed into it. And here is the uncomfortable reality. Neutrality for Pakistan is no longer an option. Whether war escalates or the limbo continues, both paths force decisions. And one of those decisions is very clear. If this limbo continues for even a couple of weeks more, Pakistan will have no choice to start buying oil from, or the energy, start fulfilling its energy needs from Iran. Not because it wants to, but because it has to. And that decision, whether you call it economic or strategic, will be seen as alignment. This is what happens in a systematic shifts. You don't announce your position, you are forced into it. Because a weak system does not want to take a decision. They avoid decisions, they want to linger on. And while all of this is happening externally, internally, the system is behaving as if nothing is happening in Pakistan. Selective authority, selective enforcement, a state that shows strength where it is convenient and disciplines where it matters. Naseem Shah, a cricketer, gets fined millions to prove a control, a structural failure remain untouched. Justice takes years to collapse into nothing. Criticism gets targeted instead of being addressed. This is not the strong state. This is an insecure system trying to appear strong. And that will not work now. The world has made Pakistan in a position that the Pakistan has no choice. And that becomes dangerous. When external pressure increases, because the decisions that are coming will not wait for the internal clarity. We will have to have it on our own. Take the simplest example. Oil, fuel, prices rise sharply, and then suddenly they get adjusted, which means it was possible to manage it differently, right? Why didn't they do it before? So the issue is not the capability, it is decision making. And decision making is trapped between IMF, external expectations, and internal political limitations. But here's the reality that is slowly becoming unavoidable. Sanctions are becoming less relevant in this changing system. Positioning is becoming more important, and positioning requires clarity, which is exactly what is missing. Right now, it's been said that Pakistan is thinking about, like principles rather than power politics, rather than national interests. So principles. If Pakistan is thinking about principles in the world order, by not going against Iran in favor of Saudi Arabia, then obviously Pakistan will have to think about its internal matters, because internal power politics so weird, and then talking about principles in the international front, that changes whole the equation. So while the world is moving towards a bloc formation, whether formally or informally, Pakistan is still trying to delay its decision. But that delay is not the strategy, and that will not work. Delay is what the systems use when they cannot decide, and eventually delay turns into collapse. Now look at the bigger picture. Again, blocs are forming, not officially declared, but clearly visible. On one side, a cluster forming around China, Iran, and potentially Pakistan with the Turkey, with possibility of Saudi Arabia adjusting toward it. On the other side, what remains of an American alignment: Israel, India, and UAE. This is not the old bipolar world. This is more fluid, more unstable, and more transactional. In such a system, hesitation is the most expensive mistake, because if you don't define your position, someone else will. And when that happens, you don't negotiate terms, you accept consequences. And that's where Pakistan is heading. Not because it lacks options, but because it lacks the ability to commit to one. And that's the final problem. This is not just a geopolitical shift. This is a decision-making test. And the uncomfortable truth is Pakistan doesn't lack options. It lacks the courage to choose one. So the real question is not what America will do or what China will do. The real question is, when the moment comes, and it is coming, will Pakistan define its place in the world order or the new world order, or will it wait long enough for that place to be decided by someone else?